What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 10-7 MMA Show. We are back with our weekly Monday show. We got me, Huzaifa, the super fan. Oops. Let me update my name there. That is what I signed in with last time. You don't need my company name. All right, so there we go. Huzaifa, the super fan, mixed martial arts. And we got Justin Guitar Hero James, a professional mixed martial artist. I think 78 fights, 50 amateur, 28 professional, which is insane when you think about it. But anyways, we are back and there's some exciting news that we have to discuss. A lot of things around the corner. I released a video last night. If you guys didn't have a chance to check it out, check it out. It's why I think Jon Jones versus Stipe is an awesome fight. I think it will be looked back in the future as a tremendous fight of two superstars. It's a legacy fight. And my whole point, Justin, I know you're going to make a video later this week about maybe you feel differently, but the whole premise of the video is we should be appreciative as MMA fans of it, to me, of this fight. These are two legends. We don't get this a lot. And well, actually, we do get it a fair amount in the UFC. I mean, but it's hard to get something like this where you have these two amazing athletes that have had so many championship fights. Now, I went over in my video last night, talked about, dude, Jon Jones has beaten 8 champions. He's beaten 8 champions if you include Cyril Gane in the mix as an interim title holder. It's insane. And he's been champ since 2011. So I went through all his fights. So I want you guys to think about his career and how fantastic it's been and all that he's done and stop complaining, in my opinion, because I think it's dope. But Justin, I want to hear from you on that in a second. We're going to get to that in item number 3. Before that, though, dude, there's something crazy that I want to show you. So somebody did a simulation, an AI simulation of Khamzat Chimaev versus Israel Adesanya. What's it called, DDP, and Sean Strickland, to see. You want me to show you guys real quick how the fight would go like this with this AI simulation?
Sure.
Okay, it's really crazy. So I just want to start with a little Khamzat news, as Khamzat is now on the scene and just dominating. So check it out. This is Khamzat right here versus all 3 at once. Here we go. So that's the simulation. That's pretty much how experts believe this fight's going to go if he takes on him. I just want to see your reaction. Anyways, all right. Without further ado, Justin, how you doing, by the way? How's your weekend?
Doing good, man. Weekend's never long enough, but we're ripping and rearing. I'm excited to get this video out.
Okay. All right. Super cool. Super cool. And I want to hear your initial thoughts, but I know I'll let you go in deeper with more detail later. By the way, guys, we gained a lot of subscribers too last week, which was really, really cool. So we're going to keep the content flowing. Thank you guys for the support. We are having fun as always. And we got tons more content coming out this week and thereafter. So the first thing I want to talk about, UFC 309, which is right around the corner. This is a card that I've actually been looking forward to for a long time. I cannot wait to see Jon Jones get back in there. But I have heard some criticism about the card, and namely this fight being on the one of the main event fights. I actually disagree. This is a fight that I'm actually very excited about. Paul Craig, a grappling specialist. Justin, as I'm sure you're aware, Bo Nickal is just such a fan. Well, a lot of people hate him, I guess, too, right now. But he's got people know him. He's really blowing up. We'll see what his exact future in the UFC is, but he's probably one of the best, like, pure wrestlers that has ever entered the sport. So, Justin, I want to turn over to you first. I know you have a wrestling background. What are your initial thoughts on this potential matchup? I think it's the first time Bo Nickal has gone against like a real hardcore pure grappler.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, but Bo Nickal had a grappling match against Gordon Ryan, and he dropped him on his head. Like, Gordon Ryan came in, turned his back, like kind of backed up to him, and Bo Nickal locked his hands around his waist, picked him up, and slammed him on his head. Unfortunately, Bo Nickal lost that match. I mean, this is a couple years ago, though. I think Bo Nickal is the truth. I think this is a favorite fight for Bo Nickal. I don't see Paul Craig. I mean, unless Paul Craig has been working on his striking, can negate Bo Nickal's wrestling. But even as a world-class grappler, Paul Craig is not going to be able to match the pace. He's not going to be able to match the pressure of Bo Nickal. I think this is a great matchup for Bo Nickal to show you what he can do against an incredible world-class grappler.
And maybe that's why the UFC picked this fight, for that reason in particular. Like, let's go. Let's see what he can do. I'm sure they believe in him. I'm sure they're rooting for him to win. So, yeah, I have seen Paul Craig striking in his last couple fights, and it does not look very great. I know he has like almost no head movement. He's just like almost like stiff like a board, like a robot, and just kind of throws shots mechanically. And he's not even really throwing with intent. It's almost like throwing, just waiting until he can get into some sort of a grappling exchange of some sort. But I gotta say, I mean, what do you think of Bo Nickal striking? Because I mean, again, I've only seen it in fights. I know he's got the wrestling that adds to the striking because people are afraid of the takedown, and that's always a tremendous benefit. But when I see, like, just purely on striking technique, do you have any thoughts on Bo Nickal's striking?
Bo Nickal is so early and so green in the sport. He's getting better every single day. When you talk about an old vet like Paul Craig, he's been around for a while. He's fought the who's who in the MMA game. His striking, it can get better, but it's not going to get that much better. So we're going to be like, oh my God, from fight 1 to fight 2 to fight 3 to fight 4, that we can see this progression like Khamzat, like Bilal, like look how good his striking is right now. But Bo Nickal, again, being so early in his career, we're going to see huge leaps and bounds from every fight. He's going to look like a different and new, improved every fighter every fight. We're just not going to see that with Paul Craig. So I think Bo Nickal's striking was good, and it's even going to be better because people are going to be afraid of his wrestling. Remember, like Khabib, how he was able to drop Conor McGregor, because, I mean, does Khabib have incredible striking? No. No, he
Mm-mm.
doesn't. But everyone's so afraid of the takedown, and I think that's where Bo Nickal is really going to excel and this time of the fight.
But Habib's striking, I think people exaggerated how not great I mean, his striking actually didn't look the cleanest like Connor's, but yeah, I actually thought he had pretty good striking. Islam even better striking. I don't know if Bo Nickal, I don't know how Bo Nickal stacks up, but again, it's a work in progress. Now, one thing I want to ask you too, this is what my coach said. He said that, and when it comes to striking, he's like, there's a much shorter learning curve. Like, you can get pretty good at striking in a couple years, whereas the ground game, that takes a lot longer to develop, sometimes 5, 10, 20 years, even, a lifetime of grappling. And we see this right now with Ilia Topuria. He's a grappler. He started as a grappler, as a wrestler, as a jiu-jitsu guy, and he's developed incredible striking in a relatively short period of time to arguably be, a lot of people are calling him the best striker in the UFC. I don't know if that's true, probably not compared to Alex Pereira, but he's up there. So do you see something like that? Do you agree with that, first of all? And secondly, do you see something like that happening where Bo Nickal maybe in 3-4 years has impeccable striking?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the progression of the game and Bo Nickal coming from a wrestling background. Wrestling, in my opinion, it's technique wise one of the easiest to learn. And when I say that, is like the techniques are very, very basic. When I was in high school, you need a good double leg and a good stand up to become a state champion. But to be able to do that while you're tired, and to be able to do that, implement that at the level Bo Nickal has been competing at, is something special. Do I think his wrestling is going to improve? Absolutely not. I mean, he's at that point to where, if anything, over the next couple of years, I think his wrestling is going to get worse. And when I say that, it's never going to be bad. But the thing is, when you're collegiate wrestling, or you're wrestling the best guys in the world every day, every week in the toughest rooms, that's keeping you sharp. Now, transitioning to MMA, I feel in the last couple of years, I'm saying the last 10 years, my wrestling has kind of dropped a little bit because I'm not straight wrestling like I used to. But Bo Nickal's at such a high level already that I think he needs to focus on his striking, and I think his striking improvements are going to be vast between every single fight.
Interesting. I mean, that's going to be so much fun to watch him progress. Right now, if you threw him against Khamzat Chimaev, I know he talks about Khamzat and all this stuff. Right now, if you threw him against Khamzat Chimaev, is it going Khamzat all the way?
And no, it's definitely not going Khamzat all the way, because I think Bo Nickal's good enough to negate his wrestling. It's really just going to come down to Khamzat's striking and mixing in his striking to get his takedowns. I saw Khamzat the other day wrestle allegedly. I saw a video of him just ragdolling this Olympic champion wrestler from I can't remember where he's from, but it's like, for Khamzat to come in there and just ragdoll this cat, like, is this guy really that good? Now, if he did that to Bo Nickal, all right, now we have our answer. But the guy said he was some world champion of some sort, and it looked like he was going with a middle school wrestler. And I know Khamzat's really good, but is he that good that he can go out of his sport? He can go out of MMA, go into wrestling, and just manhandle a world champion? I don't buy it, but I do know he is a
Really?
world-class wrestler. I mean, bro,
It's MMA wrestling. He makes that distinction. He's like, yeah, you can take these guys who've won Olympic gold and put them against me. In straight wrestling, maybe I won't win. But if it's MMA wrestling,
but it was a straight wrestling match. It was straight wrestling.
Oh.
Yeah, he just ragdolled this cat and like, oh, he's Olympic level wrestler. And it's like, is he though? Is he? And again, I'm not criticizing Khamzat's wrestling. That's not what I'm doing. I think he's incredible. He'd smash me. There's no question about it. But to go against the number one guy in the world and just ragdoll him, like, don't you think that, Asics or Hayabusa would be like, hey, we need to get this guy in a wrestling singlet, and he's going to go compete for our country in wrestling to win some gold medal? Because again, he didn't beat him. He fucking ragdolled him. He made him look like he was a average wrestler at best. And I know Khamzat's wrestling is really, really good. I mean, look what he just did, in his last fight. And MMA wrestling are different. But still, I mean, if his wrestling was that good, I think that he should go win some world championships first and then transition back. Obviously, that's not going to happen because of how deep he is in the UFC. But if you're a world-class wrestler and you can beat world champions wrestling, why wouldn't you go down that route, get all the accolades of there, and then come to the UFC and be a UFC champion, kind of like Bo Nickal's doing right now?
Okay, I can answer that question because I know so much about Khamzat Chimaev. He tried. His paperwork wasn't in order, is what the story as the story goes. But he had faced and beaten in like local competitions or regional competitions people who went on to win Olympic gold, and he beat them. He's talked about that. So growing up, he wanted to do that, but he wasn't able to. Then he went to Sweden, and the most he could do there was compete nationally at Sweden, and he was a Swedish wrestling champ. I think 3 times. I can't remember exactly, but he was a Swedish wrestling champ. So he got the accolades that he could, but then obviously he wanted to make money and transitioned into mixed martial arts. I think Khamzat might be one of the greatest naturally talented wrestlers of all time. Very well may be the best wrestler of all time. Who knows? I mean, I'm not a wrestling expert, but I think he's got that innate ability, mentality, physicality, all those things that I do think he's tremendous. And I bet he could have won Olympic gold had things been in order. Okay, since we're talking about Khamzat Chimaev, let's I'm going to put up Khamzat Chimaev as the banner. I want to take one other quick detour. I've been watching back a lot of stuff since that last fight and how shocked the entire world was, how blown away we were. And I feel like the world has gone a little crazy when they talk about him. I even listened to Ariel Helwani. I went back and listened to his post UFC 308 show and listen to how he described. Well, I'm not going to play it, but I'm going to explain what he says. He's like, yeah, Khamzat came out and he hasn't been fighting so often lately. And, he had that Gilbert fight, which he won, but it wasn't so impressive. And he looked like he got tired. And I'm like, hello, he won. He jumped up massively in the rankings. He fought Gilbert Burns, who just recently lost Kamaru Usman for a title shot when he was very low ranked, right? And he went up and he beat him. And then people are complaining that it wasn't impressive enough. So weird. Then they talk about the Kamaru Usman fight. He's like, yeah, then he had that Kamaru Usman fight. But everybody thought if the fight went on 2 more rounds, then he probably would have lost and Kamaru Usman would have won. I'm like, how is that like a knock on somebody? You measure your energy levels based on a 3-round fight and you go out and you leave it all out there. And they're like, yeah, but if it went 2 more rounds, yeah, but it wasn't a 5-round fight. Like, I just don't understand these narratives. And like, credit to Ariel, he is giving him his credit now and saying, wow, amazing, unbelievable. We've never seen anybody like this. I don't know who can beat him. I don't think anybody can beat him, all that stuff. So they're giving him his flowers now, but it's just so bizarre to me. And I'm going to make another video about this later in the week, why the narrative is like this. I think, I played that clip at the beginning from X-Men with Apocalypse or whatever, that character just like wiping people out. I feel like people looked at him like that. And then when they're like, oh, he doesn't have pure, just like godlike power to just pick somebody up with his mind and throw them somewhere, then they're like, he's not really that good. Like, what do you make of these bizarre narratives where people are criticizing because he didn't win definitively enough, or Kamaru Usman, if it went on 2 more rounds, he would have lost theoretically? Like, this is just the dumb. I've never heard anything like this before.
Well, you look at it like, I mean, he comes into the sport, he fights like 4 times in 1 year, smashes up, has all this hype behind him. And I was buying what he was selling. Like, wow, this guy he's the truth. But then he has this long layoff and he keeps getting hurt. And then he talks about retiring and then he gets sick. And then there's this and then there's that. So it's how consistent can this guy be? But when he has shown up, you can't say, well, you can't make hypothetical situations. Well, if there's 2 more rounds, he would have lost. Maybe, but we'll never know because he won. Yeah. And, Gilbert Burns, same thing. Dude, Khamzat, when he came onto the scene, we came onto the scene around the same time. He was red hot. He went, I think he was 4-0 in a year, something crazy like that. He was taking short notice fights. He has one of the quickest turnarounds. But I think it's the layoff that got to people. A lot of people are shot to stardom, and there's like, oh, shit, so much is going on and so much is happening. You have such a high expectation, and then it takes such a long layoff. Remember, out of sight, out of mind. And in my opinion, I come in, I smash. And he did just everything he was going to say. And then he had a long layoff, and then he had a very competitive fight with Gilbert Burns, which I thought was kind of eye-opening. And then he had a good fight with Kamaru Usman, and then he had another long layoff, and again, getting sick, getting hurt, and these things happen. And then he talks, I'm going to retire, and this and that. So it's like, all right, well, maybe being at the top was too much for him. And this is something I thought. I'm not saying everybody thought that, but this is something I thought. Maybe the pressure was too much. His expectation was this high, and maybe in his head he only thought he should be here. So right. Maybe that, and that's why I thought he was taking these long layoffs. But when he showed up against Robert Whittaker, and I took Robert Whittaker in this fight, I didn't see him taking Robert Whittaker down. I saw it becoming a striking fight, and I thought he was going to be pushed to the limit. But what he did to Robert Whittaker, As soon as I saw that, as soon as I saw the finish, I went to the store and I bought all my stock in Khamzat. This guy's the real deal. I'm, again,
Yes.
buying what he's selling. Huzefa, after watching your videos, after hearing how much you like to stroke this guy, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. Khamzat Chimaev is going to be the next UFC champion.
Yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. You know what's one other last crazy thing that I saw? I've been like obsessing over his rise to start. Like I cannot wait. And we're gonna circle back to this a little bit later. But the last thing is I rewatched that UFC 308 video where they showcased the Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat matchup. That was maybe the coolest video that the UFC has ever shot and ever. It's literally like a movie. But when you go back and you watch the wrestling practice with Khamzat, bro, I gotta show it to you. He literally does exactly what he does to Robert Whittaker when he was grappling with somebody, where he wrapped his arm. I swear, dude, he wrapped his arm around the chin. He did that exact same move in sparring. So I'm almost thinking that he's realized that he has such a strong squeeze that on the chin. I mean, is that possible that he realized that on the chin for him works, and that was all calculated? Is that possible, or is this something that happens all the time?
No, it's definitely something possible. I mean, you go with guys like, some people just have inhuman strength. You know, like when I roll with Jake Shields at Extreme Couture, it's like I don't feel Jake Shields is that much bigger than me, but when he gets on top, it feels like I have a fucking house on top of me. It feels like his squeeze strength is like nothing I've ever felt before. Now you take Khamzat Chimaev, who's training the specific technique, like, hey, I'm gonna put my forearm around your jaw and I'm gonna break your jaw when I squeeze, and he did just that to Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, holy smokes. If he figured that out and then he's practicing that and then he's got like a new move that nobody else can execute but him, holy smokes. He's like, this is so crazy. All right, we got to move on from Hamza. We'll come back roughly to this. And Tehran, what's up? He says, what's up, boys? Welcome back to the show. Great to have you as per usual. All right, let's move on to holy smokes, Chandler versus Olivera. This is a great co-main for UFC 309. For those of you guys, you negative Nancys who are not excited about this fight card, crazy talk. This is going to be such a great fight. And we're going to talk about Jones versus Stipe in a second. But Chandler versus Olivera, I don't think anybody should rightfully be disappointed, because the first fight was amazing. Remember that vacant title fight? It was incredible. They threw it together. It was all in the mix when Khabib retired, and we have this person, that person. Dustin Poirier called him the paper champ. Obviously, that was not the case. Charles Oliveira came out, won, and just dominated the division for a period of time. Took down Dustin Poirier, defeated Gaethje, was just on a roll until Islam stopped that train. But this was an amazing fight. Now we get to see a rematch, Chandler versus Oliveira. I should have said Chandler versus Oliveira 2. What's your excitement level for this fight before we even get into any thoughts or predictions?
You know, to put this on as the co-main event, I thought was ridiculous. I think this is an incredible fight, dude. Like, if you guys remember the first fight, Chandler and Olivera come out, and Chandler, hurts Olivera right away. Yeah. And then Olivera hurts, I believe this fight was finished in the first round.
Second round. It was almost finished in the first round.
Almost, okay. It was an incredible fight. Anytime you see Mike Chandler in there, Charles Oliveira, one of the greatest lightweights to do it. He had an incredible. I mean, this guy got to the UFC very, very early. Had a very rough start in the UFC, and just to deal with everything he went through, get to the UFC championship, defend his belt a whole bunch of times, lose to the best pound for pound fighter in the world. I mean, this has an incredible fight. It has fight of the night written all over it, and I could see this fight stealing the spotlight of the main event.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are calling it the people's main event. You know how they like to say that. I mean, I'm still more excited for John Jones or Stipe because of the legacy element, but this is a great fight. Dana White says it's a #1 contenders fight too, which is very, very cool, because I do think if Chandler pulls it off, and I know most people are picking Oliveira, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Most people are picking Oliveira, but if Chandler did win, that'd be kind of a cool story. And I think we all like Chandler. He's a fun guy to root for, and if he pulled it off, he might go up and challenge Islam, which would be a crazy matchup. So it's a lot of fun storylines. And even if Oliveira comes back, wins, maybe he goes up and gets a rematch. I suppose that could be cool too. But what do you foresee happening? What do you foresee going down here?
Wasn't impressed with Oliveira's last, come out against, Islam. Chandler hasn't dealt with any injuries, hasn't had to deal with any adversity besides the Conor McGregor pulling out. I think Chandler's going to be hungry. How hungry is Oliveira? Again, being the champ, having his little reign, and then, taking a loss to Islam. Can he come back and be the same guy that beat Michael Chandler the first time? I'm not sold that he can. I have Chandler taking this fight.
Oh, wow. I think I need to think about it more. I'm not sure. My heart says I want Chandler to win just because I think it's a more interesting story. You know what? I'm going to go Chandler too. We'll put out the good vibes and the good energy, but I'm really curious to see what they look like and sound like in the interviews in the next week and a half. So that'll be very exciting. But what a great fight. You know it's going to be exciting because Chandler just refuses to do anything not exciting. Also, if you remember, Olivera had Chandler's back in that fight, and Chandler jumped up and like slammed him on his back to get out of it. That was insane. Everybody thought Chandler was done. So it was a really good fight. I'm excited for it. Okay, moving on. The question of the hour, Jon Jones versus Stipe. Justin, are you excited? I know I am, and I know I made that video about it, but are you excited? And if no, or if yes, either way, why?
I'm just finishing up the video about this fight, so I'm not going to go too in depth about it. Excitement or excited isn't the right word to say. It's like Jon Jones has done so much for the MMA community since being in the UFC of August 9th of 2008. This is a nostalgic fight for me. At one point, Stipe Miocic was called the baddest man on the planet. Uh,
Mhm.
this is a nostalgia fight. I'm looking forward to the fight, but I'm not excited about it. I don't see this fight. I don't see anything happening in this fight unless Stipe goes out there and starts as Jon Jones. That's going to jump me off the couch. It's like I feel Jon Jones is going to go in there. They're going to play pity pat, and then he's going to catch like a guillotine, maybe knock Stipe out. Stipe's had such a long layoff, but both of these guys have done so much for the sport, so much for the light heavyweight and the heavyweight division. I think the fight is a good fight for Jon to sail off into the sunset. Excited isn't the right word for me about it, but I am going to tune in, and regardless of the outcome, I am going to support both fighters going into this fight.
So let me throw this out to you because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Stipe hasn't won in 4 years. Or his last fight was Francis Ngannou, and he got starched, and he's so old, and all this stuff." And again, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. But I do feel like there's some hypocrisy going on in the MMA community. That happens all the time. But like, think about this. Remember back when Khabib was champ? What was everybody talking about? What were we all fantasizing about? The dream matchup that GSP would come back, and he was nearly 40. I think he was like 39 when they were talking about this. That GSP would come back, come out of retirement. He hadn't fought in like 4 or 5 years, and fight Khabib. And everybody was excited about it. They were like, "Oh my God, this would be a dream fight. This would be a super fight. This would be incredible." They were entertaining it. Now, why is it that for that fight, when it was roughly the same age, but a lighter weight class where age theoretically has a greater impact, were people so excited about it? And then in this one, everybody's just like, oh, he's going to run through Stipe and all that. And this is the heavyweight division. Stipe, I think, is only 42, 41. He's not that deep into his 40s. We've seen Glover Teixeira and other champs. People fight well into their 40s as well in the heavyweight division. And Stipe is a dangerous opponent for Jon. I heard Anthony Smith talking about Stipe will have the speed advantage most likely. Stipe is around the same size. These type of fighters tend to be tricky for Jon Jones. He's going to have great wrestling and grappling to match Jon Jones. He might nullify Jon Jones's wrestling and grappling. So what do you think about that perspective? I mean, do you feel like people are unfairly counting Stipe out, especially when we talked about these other fights? Oh, fighters coming out of retirement, we're so excited. Oh my God, let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden here, it's like just because they weren't retired and he had a long layoff, everybody's discounting it. What do you think about that?
Well, I think George St. Pierre and Habib is a terrible comparison, and the reason I say that is because Habib is 29-0, and he's arguably the greatest lightweight of all time. George St. Pierre at the time, greatest welterweight of all time, not coming off a loss, looking very impressive. Stipe, I mean, he lost to Daniel Cormier, who Jon Jones beat 3 times. I don't care if there's a no contest.
But
He
he
convincingly
beat
beat him
him.
3 times.
But no. But then Stipe beat
Right, right,
Daniel.
right.
Oh,
But yes, he did. But he still lost. He still lost to him. Jon Jones never lost to him. And I don't care about the no contest. I mean, he beat him 3 times in a row. They were all competitive fights. The DC and the Stipe fights, all of them were competitive. Jon Jones against DC, they weren't really that competitive. And it was when DC went to heavyweight. And if you put a DC at light heavyweight compared to the heavyweight, I mean, he looks like a fat bum. He has his guts hanging over. I remember watching the fight in such disgust because he pulled his fight shorts up over his belly button so his gut wasn't hanging over his shorts. So how can you compare light heavyweight DC compared to heavyweight DC? And he's
right.
losing to this fat guy. When you look at Habib, who's fought, he didn't have that many title defenses, but George St. Pierre is known for his MMA wrestling. Habib known for his MMA wrestling. This is two of the best MMA wrestlers coming together. That's something to get excited about. We're talking about a guy that lost to fat DC and then a guy that never lost to DC when he was at the best of the best of the best. Stipe, again, getting knocked out by Francis Ngannou. I mean, he's great and everything, but he's become irrelevant to the UFC. That I firmly believe that's why you can't really compare George St. Pierre and Khabib, because again, we're talking about the two all-time greats. Stipe, yeah, he's one of the greatest heavyweights, but heavyweight's the weakest division out of all the divisions. When I say weakest, I mean talent pool. I had a talk about it of any great heavyweight athlete is going to become an NBA player, is going to become an NFL player. Why would they want to fight when they can fight for 50 grand, when they can go make 50 million playing basketball or playing football? Like the athletes are the big athletes, the heavyweight athletes of the world are playing football and they're playing basketball. They're not playing MMA for a measly $100,000. I just don't think. And I think that, and John Jones, both of his brothers are in the NFL. John could have went and played in the NFL, but instead he decided to go the MMA route, just to show you what a superstar athlete could do in MMA when they dedicate their life to MMA instead of the NFL or the NBA. And does that make sense?
Yeah. So you think there's that much of a gap between Stipe and John Jones? I'm talking about purely athleticism. You think
Okay,
John
so
Jones? Yeah.
yeah, I think. Oh yeah, athleticism, absolutely. There's no question
Mm,
about it. Okay, so
wow.
who do you think wins in George St. Pierre versus Khabib?
Khabib.
Khabib. Okay,
Yeah.
do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be competitive?
That's super hard for me to say because I think there was a lot of unknowns in terms of like that layoff coming out. I remember hearing George St. Pierre in interviews being like, I still feel like I'm just as competitive as I was before. I always stay in great shape. I stay healthy. I'm training. I'm beating guys in the gym. So I think it would have been competitive from the sounds of it, but I don't know.
And I
I
think
didn't.
people are excited about that because you said it just there. I think it would be competitive. Nobody thinks this fight's going to be competitive. If Stipe comes out there and does something incredible, that'll be awesome. I just don't see it happening.
Fair enough. And I guess that was kind of what I was getting to though. Like people don't think it would be competitive, but is that an unfair belief or you actually feel like it is kind of justified?
It's relatively justified. Again, we're talking about the number one pound for pound MMA fighter, not heavyweight, not light heavyweight, the number one pound for pound MMA fighter of all weight classes,
Mhm.
fighting a guy that hasn't fought in 4 years, that just got brutally knocked out by a guy that's not even in an organization. He's already lost to a guy. He got knocked out by a guy that John Jones beat easily 3 times. Unfortunately, man, I want this fight to be competitive. In the video that I talk about, I have a lot of respect for this fight. I have a lot more respect now than I did initially when it was announced. I've had time to think about it. I've had time to look at both guys' career as a whole.
Mhm.
I just don't. I hope it's going to be a competitive fight. Unfortunately, I just don't see it being a competitive fight.
Okay, and one more thing I want to throw out there too, and you may very well be right, and that's the fun. We're gonna find out in about a week and a half. But one last thing I did want to throw out that I do think if this is the last time we see John Jones fight, one unique element about John Jones, which I hope we all appreciate and can really respect as we maybe see him do his final walk to the octagon. One of the things about John Jones is he is very particular about who he fights, meaning he does a tremendous amount of research. I just heard an interview of him or a voiceover of him talking about this process where he studies his opponents like crazy. He develops a game plan based on his opponent's strengths and weaknesses and is a very cerebral fighter. So I think he's going to do something like that for Stipe, and I can't wait to see the game plan. You'll probably have a much better eye for detail of what he's doing and how he's attacking Stipe in ways that are quite problematic for him. But like, that's one of the coolest things. He's really a high level chess player when it comes to MMA. And I'm sure a lot of other fighters are, but obviously John Jones is probably one of the best at it. I've even heard that he'll troll people, troll his opponents on their social media. He'll like learn everything about them. And that's another reason why he doesn't like to take late replacement fights, because he can't do his entire process. But anyways, this is going to be, in my opinion, something to very much look forward to. Can't wait for that video from you, Justin, to give your perspective. All right. Last topic for today, the UFC main event mystery. We still don't know what's going down for UFC 310. We recently talked about how Bilal Muhammad, Justin's favorite fighter, got a bone infection and can no longer make the walk against Shavkat Rakhmonov. And at first, I think a lot of people were very disappointed. But the more I think about it, I actually think this might be a benefit for the UFC to build more anticipation for that eventual fight when it does go down. And it gives them a great opportunity to slot in something really, really cool. Now, I made a video on Saturday talking about one of the replacement options that's been discussed, which is Usman versus Shavkat. Justin, before you even jump into that fight, because I think that's the most likely candidate, is there anything that you on the top of your mind would be like, hey, I think this would be an amazing replacement fight for the main event? DDP versus Khamzat, or I know people were talking about Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Like, what pops in your mind as the right choice initially for this main event replacement?
I mean, it just really goes down to what the UFC wants to do. I wouldn't mind seeing a good middleweight fight. The middleweight division is in shambles right now. Everyone's calling for a title fight, 1 through 4. Everyone thinks they deserve. You got Khamzat, you got Sean Strickland, you got DDP as the champ, you got fuck, I mean, name 3 other guys that all think they're deserving of a title. Kamaru Usman. I would love to see Shavkat get in there, and I know it's going down another weight class, but because you mentioned it, I would love to see that one. Or, like I said, a contendership fight or an interim championship fight at the middleweight division.
Oh, an interim middleweight. Well, who would you want to do the interim middleweight?
Well, I mean, you got Sean Strickland. You know, he's there. He says he's next in line for DDP. After Hamzat's, what about Sean Strickland versus Khamzat?
That would be interesting. You know what's funny too? People are like, "Oh, well, there's no way we can get." Wait, let me double check. I think it's in the U.S. where UFC 310 is. Hold on, let me just double check the location. It is in Vegas, I want to say. Wait, hold on one second. UFC 310 location. It's funny though too because yeah, it's in Vegas, so it's T-Mobile Arena. So it's funny. People are like assuming that the next time Khamzat will fight will be next year because they're like, "Oh, he fights so infrequently." Again, nobody's listening to the interviews. It's like, hello, the reason why he's not fighting is not because of him. Yeah, he got sick in June. Fine. That was extenuating circumstances in a lot of ways. It was from the food. And I think a combination of, he was talking about the heat and the AC that he had to sit under because I think he was overtraining. I think a lot of these issues have been fixed. By the way, nobody's talking about the fact that Khamzat took probably 0 damage in that fight. It was over in 3 minutes in the first round. He probably could turn around and fight.
And he's done it before. He had 4 fights in 1 year. He has like the quickest turnaround. He fought like twice in 1 week or twice in 10 days.
10 days.
I mean, I think it would be an awesome turnaround for like, all right, Khamzat's either fighting Sean Strickland, which I don't know if Sean Strickland will take that fight. As my teammate, but from a stylistic standpoint, Sean has incredible wrestling and wrestling defense. I think his wrestling and his wrestling defense are highly underrated because he never has to use it. But I don't know if Sean will take that fight. I mean, he feels that he's next in line for the title fight. Will he risk his title contention? And that's one thing, like Sean always talks about, I don't care about the belt. I don't care about the belt. Well, if you don't care about the belt, why don't we step up? I mean, I think it'd be a great matchup.
And I'll tell you my thoughts. I think that's an interesting idea. I haven't heard anybody talk about an interim title defense. Like, let's say if they try to pitch it to DDP and he refuses, then maybe they do some sort of an interim thing. Me personally, I actually don't want to see that. What I'd love to see instead, and I know Sean's your teammate, and much respect, I'm a fan of Sean, big fan. I was rooting for him against DDP, but God, I got to say at this point, it also has, if I was running the UFC, I just business wise, I'm sorry. Like the Khamzat's, everybody's talking about Khamzat and everybody's saying nobody can beat him. You gotta do Khamzat versus DDP. There is no second option. So to me, what I would do is I'd love to see Sean versus Khamzat next. I'd love to see, and I know Sean's probably not going to like that, but think how amazing it would be to have Khamzat go up, fight DDP, win. I think he's going to win, and he's going to beat DDP, and then he'll be champion. And then let's let Sean Strickland go in and fight Khamzat. They've sparred together. They have this great backstory. They've talked smack back and forth already. Sean's been kind of calling him out. I think Sean wasn't a big fan of how Khamzat spoke about the sparring, which I totally understand, right? I know you generally guys have a code about not discussing what goes down in sparring inside the gym. I think he maybe violated that a little bit. In Khamzat's defense, I think he's just an honest truth teller. He just talks and speaks from the heart. So he was just saying what happened. But anyways, I think that could be such a cool buildup. So how likely is that? I don't know. I know DDP is not the biggest fan of short notice, but God, what a way to end the year. Okay, so if they could pull this off, holy smokes, if somehow they can resolve the visa issue and all that stuff, but it's unlikely. The other option that people have talked about, and I still think is on the table, although Alex Pereira, I think I saw something where he thinks he might have a severe hand injury now from the last fight, but they have talked about Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. I'll tell you my one issue with that is Alex Pereira is going to be fighter of the year. Oh, by the way, I've thought more about that. Alex Pereira, fighter of the year over Ilia Topuria, hands down. There's no argument. I think it was amazing what Ilia Topuria did, but yeah, I would go Alex Pereira, and we could talk about that as well. But my one problem is, what if Alex Pereira takes that fight and loses? That'd be horrible. Like, all the momentum he's built, fighter of the year for sure, and he takes this 4th fight against the toughest opponent yet, or one of the toughest, I guess, at least, and he loses. I mean, do you agree with me? I almost don't even want him to risk it and just close out 2024 just being on top. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. When you're talking about, Pereira, who's done so much for the sport, especially this year, stepping up, saving card after card after card, putting on knockout show after knockout show, I think he's done enough for the company, and I think he just needs to take a back seat, settle these injuries, and come back strong in 2025.
Okay, so let's take now these two off the table. Let's talk about the one that's probably going to happen, which people are talking about, which is Kamaru Usman versus Shavkat. I heard an interview today with Shavkat on Ariel Helwani's show saying that he's down to fight Usman and that he thinks that, I guess, not that it's necessarily like super likely yet, but it is, I think, what's being discussed. I can't wait for this fight. I think I heard some people in our comments even saying, oh, Usman time has defeated him. He's over the, all this nonsense. I just don't get it. I don't get why people are all of a sudden counting him out. They're like, oh, he's had 3 losses. Yeah, hello. The first loss to Leon Edwards, he was winning that fight the entire time. Okay, he got beat the second time. He did awesome against Khamzat. We just saw what Khamzat did to Robert Whittaker. He did amazing against Khamzat. Khamzat obviously definitively beat him, but like it was an amazing performance. So I think this is a great idea. He moved up. He saved that event. Give him the shot. Give him the interim title shot. Let's see. I want to see Kamaru Usman versus Bilal. Let's go. I'd love to see Kamaru Usman win. Okay, what do you think?
For which matchup? Bilal against
for Bilal versus Shavkat, like for an interim title. Are you a fan of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah, you're right. Shavkat versus Kamaru. I mean, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I like the fight. It's a win-win. You have the old school champ, Kamaru Usman stepping up against the 18-0 undefeated, 18 finishes, not just 18-0, but 18 finishes. It's a win-win for the company. If Shavkat wins, it's a great time. It's a passing of the torch. And a lot of old school fighters talk about the passing of the torch of the new up and coming generation. Shavkat goes in there and knocks Usman out. This guy's the real deal, and it's a great time for Usman to be able to pass the torch to him. Now, Usman goes in there, beats the undefeated 18-0 fighter. This guy still has it, and he can still get to the championship level. I think it's a win-win for the company.
Let's go. Okay, I hope we see that. That'll be a really, really cool fight to end the year with on December 7th in Nevada, and or Las Vegas, Nevada. That'll be the last fight of the year, man. 2024. Best year in the history of the UFC, in my opinion, which is crazy because, I mean, I know Conor's kind of on his way out, but he hasn't even fought once this year. And I think it's been the best year overall just for the buildup, for the outcomes. Alex Pereira on the scene, Ilia Topuria, all the Peyton Talbot coming into the mix as a new up-and-coming star. Bo Nickal had a great year. Wow, we're going to do an awesome end-of-the-year show just to recap everything. But anyways, that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining. Please click that like button if you're on here. Thomas Karina said, what's up, my brothers? Keep on keeping on. Great channel. Thank you so much. Thanks, and Two Smelly Fingers. All right, this is a new subscriber. What's up, my friend? He says, Paul Gregg runs through Bo Nickal. Let's go. I mean, that could be cool. Whoa. That'd be cool. I actually would be a fan of that. I like Paul Craig. He's funny. So let's see what happens. And then Bo Nickal, even if he did get beaten, he'll come back better. You know that guy has crazy work ethic and crazy grit and mentality. So whatever, I don't even think a loss would derail him one bit. It probably would fuel him, if anything. But I'm imagining the odds are going the other way. So anyways, thank you guys so much for joining. We will be back on Friday, and Justin's going to release that video today or later at some point this week. So comment if you agree with him, great. If you disagree with him and agree with me more so and feel that this fight is exciting, let us know as well. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you in the next episode. Take it easy.